Hello and welcome. Today I would like to discuss the ego. What is it? How does it affect us on a daily basis? And how can we bring awareness to it? So, what is the ego? The ego is identification with thought. So, when we identify with a thought, that is the creation of the ego. So in order to really understand the ego, we must understand what thought is and where it comes from. A great question that has brought much clarity to my life and others that I would like to ask you is, can you think of anything outside of your own experience? At first, many people are tempted to say, yes, I can. I can think of war, and I can think of the fact that people fought in a war. Okay? How do you know the concept of war? How do you know that people fought in these things called wars? Did you experience that somewhere? Did you experience that in a classroom or in a book or in a movie or talking to someone that fought in a war? You see, regardless of what the experience is, even if you weren't physically there to experience it, you experienced the concept somewhere, right? You've experienced it somewhere. Another example would be skydiving. Many people haven't been skydiving, right? So how can we think of that? Well, again, did you experience the concept somewhere? Have you watched a video of someone skydiving? Have you spoken to someone that has been skydiving? You experienced that. So another way to think about it is that also affirms the answer to this question is you can't think about what it's like to skydive because you've never actually skydived. And you can't think about what it would be like for you to fight in a war because you've never fought in a war. But again, you can think of these concepts and you can think of many things within these concepts that you have experienced through books, through videos, through movies, through stories, right? And so the question again, can you think of anything outside of your own experience? If you would like to look at this from a different angle to, again, confirm this question, let's look at it from a biological or physiological standpoint, right? What is happening in regards to our mind and our brain with thoughts? So when we have an experience, a new experience, a neural pathway within our brain literally grows and connects. Now along this neural pathway, a message can now be sent. These messages are memories, they're thoughts, right? Without the experience, you would not be able to grow the neural pathway for this message to cross. So literally, without the experience that you've had, you would not be able to think of anything. And so no matter which way you look at it, your experience equals your thoughts. Another cool exercise that you can do if you would like is to start to write down your thoughts and start to connect them back to an experience you had that was the first experience that allowed you to have this thought. This can be challenging at times, but the ones you are able to connect back, I think will bring a lot of clarity to this subject. So, that's what thoughts are. Thoughts come from your experience, okay? Now, knowing that thoughts come from your experience and ego is identification with thought, then it is very safe to say that ego is identification with your experience. And so, why is this relevant? Well, if ego is identification with your experience, then my ego would be identification with my experience. And so, if we both identify with our experience, basically what we're saying is, my experience is right, and if my experience is right, then your experience and everyone else's experience is wrong, right? If I identify with my experience, then everyone else's experience is challenging my experience, so I must defend my experience, right? And it's just such an interesting point of view to have, right? It's pretty much the basis of all arguments, right? It's me trying to convince you that what I think, which is what I've experienced, is right, and you trying to convince me what I think, what you think, and what you've experienced is right. and we're just going back and forth based off experience. But to realize that we could get the rest of the world involved, however many billion people, and they could do the same thing, and you could have billions of people arguing based off their experience. I think an interesting experience that we can all relate to, that really shows the the depth of the ego and how it manifests, is our identification with our country, right? And so I was born in Australia. And so for a very long time, I would identify as Australian. I am Australian. And let's just say that you're American, right? And you identify with that. You are American. And then we decide to talk about this. And I start to defend and identify with my experiences and my thoughts of Australia. Oh, Australia's the best because we have the best beaches and we have like unbelievable fruit. And the weather's unbelievable. And then you turn around and say, no man, America's the best. I mean, we have like so many like diverse landscapes and we're so multicultural. And I mean, dude, like we're the world power, we're the best, right? And so you can see how this is just gonna go back and forth, right? With no real end. And what's quite like challenging to think about and quite sad is like the ego has been the start of every single war that has been fought. So many people have died and perished because of the ego, because of this identification that I know best and we are the best and we will enforce our experience and our thoughts upon you because we know better. That is the extreme of the ego. That is where it can lead, both on a collective level as a country and on an individual level as a human being. This is the essence of the ego. And if you would like to bring awareness to your ego, I would invite you to start to bring awareness to your emotions and start to bring awareness to the physical sensations that you receive from your body, because we're having thoughts, and based off those thoughts, we're having emotions, right? And if we can bring awareness to our emotions, then we can ask ourselves a very important question that allows us to look deeper into the ego and the subconscious mind. The question I would invite you to ask yourself is, what story am I telling myself right now that is allowing me to feel this way? For example, let's use the nationality example, right? I am Australian, you are American, and let's say that we get into an argument. And obviously in an argument, people feel frustrated and angry. So in that moment, if I can notice how I'm feeling, I would give myself the space, so I would walk away from the argument. I would take some breaths and allow my emotions to settle down. And I would ask myself the question, what must I be believing right now? What story must I be telling myself right now, right, in order to feel this way? And in that case, the story I would be telling myself is that because I was born in Australia, I am better than you. Or because I was born in Australia, I think Australia is better than America. But how interesting is that? Because if you were born in Australia, you would be saying the same things I'm saying. And if I was born in America, I'd be saying the same things you were saying. And so it is really just based off our experience. And that question is a really cool question, because if you can ask yourself that question sincerely and answer it honestly, the answer brings much clarity to the distortion that the ego brings into our lives. I'm very excited for you to try this practice, and I hope this has brought more clarity to the subject of the ego and has hopefully brought up a lot of memories and synchronicities that you have realized when you have been egoic, or when the egoic mind has taken over you. Infinite love to you all.